Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. So today we're just gonna read some creepy stories. I don't feel like thinking about things too hard. I feel like doing something lighthearted. And so my version of doing something lighthearted is reading creepy stories, I guess. Mind you, these are from one of my favorite subreddits, Let's Not Meet. These stories are allegedly true, but I know some of them are probably fabricated, but let's just go into this assuming that they're true because it's more fun that way. I picked ones that I think are honestly believable and could happen. Just my little disclaimer. I'm not gonna be reading the titles of any of these stories because most of the time it gives things away. I was 18 years old and on my way home to California on summer break after my sophomore year of college. I had a 9-hour car ride ahead of me and stocked up on energy drinks, soda, and snacks for the ride home. I left school late after dinner with friends and planned on driving into the night. I'm making good time and I'm around 3 or so hours from home, which was Yuba City at the time. I'm an hour outside Reno and on a lonely stretch of road when it happened. I suddenly get the urge to pee. Those energy drinks I chugged coming back to haunt me, and I kick myself in the ass for not stopping when I had gassed up 45 minutes before. I saw a sign that advertised a rest stop coming up, so I drove the few miles to the sign and then pulled in. Parked in the parking lot was a ratchet-looking sedan, and on the other side of the lot, a Sprinter-type van. I quickly got out and hurriedly jogged to the restroom before I peed myself. I was flushing when I heard someone enter and I froze. I'm in decent physical shape and I work out quite often, but for a guy I'm on the smaller side. I'm only 5'7" and about 160 pounds, so I'm bracing myself for some Michael Myers type shit when I open the door and see an average Joe looking guy. He looked up and gave me a friendly smile, then stepped over to the urinal. I washed my hands and was getting ready to leave when he starts talking. His voice was gravelly and low, so I couldn't hear him the first time. "You like dogs, man?" he asked me as he washed his hands. He was wearing those coveralls mechanics wear and he had grease stains on it. My creeper meter started beeping. I shot him a friendly smile and said to him as I left the bathroom, "Yeah man, dogs are cool." Well, that was the wrong thing to say because he comes following me out the door almost on my heels. "I got a new puppy. Want to see him? He's real cute." Now I'm freaking out. Keys are in one hand and my cell phone is in the other. I called back to him with a shaky voice. "No thanks, gotta get going." I'm getting in my car when he grabs the door, trying to open it wider. Dude was strong and he's a good few inches smaller than me. I start my car, put my phone to my ear, and what he said next caused me to almost crap my pants. "Time the cops get here, you'll already be dead." With that, I kicked out at his stomach and thank goodness it connected. He let go of the door and fell on his ass. I then locked the doors and screeched the fuck out of that rest stop. I saw him scramble for his car, but I didn't stay around to watch. I took off like a bat out of hell. I was a nervous wreck for the next 3 hours, thinking he was going to follow me home and finish me off. When I got home, I told my dad, who had stayed up to wait for me, what happened, but he talked me out of calling the authorities. I made sure to take an entire different route when I went back to school in the fall, and because of that, I've never stopped at another rest stop again. So dude, wherever you are, I do not want to see your damned puppy. I don't know if any of you guys have watched or remember the gas station in The Hills Have Eyes. I think it's the first one. But since then, I've not really liked rest stops or gas stations, whether it's day or night. I just feel overwhelmed and creeped out. Obviously, I'm referring more to gas stations that are in the middle of nowhere, like in this situation, not the ones that are like at a corner of a street where there are always like hundreds of cars passing. I thought this one was really creepy, especially what the guy was saying. Obviously the "you'll be dead before the cops get here" comment is very creepy, very movie-esque, I must say. I know that we're in the suspension of disbelief now, so it happened. I can't even follow my own rules. This happened about 15 years ago. At the time, I was dating around and I had a few creepy encounters during that time, but this guy takes the cake. He was an acquaintance my brother had met at a bar a few times and was showing around the local area, and he was new to the country. My brother set us up because he was apparently desperate for a girlfriend, and I guess I was pretty desperate too because we went on a date together. The date was probably the worst first date I've ever been on. I showed up to the restaurant we were meeting at. He was late, which isn't a huge deal, so I let it slip and we went to sit down. To be honest, I knew from the start I wasn't really attracted to him, but I thought I would be polite to see if we had a nice night. He started off politely too. He held the door for me, pulled my seat out. It wasn't really necessary, but it was nice anyway. Then, when we were sitting down waiting for someone to come and take our orders, I was reading the menu and he started talking about how much his quote-unquote fiance would have liked this place. That took me by surprise, and naturally I asked about his fiance. He revealed that he had had a fiancée before moving over, but he had just left her to move to another country. I asked why they'd broken up, and he said they never really broke up as such, but he got fed up of her quote-unquote nagging him about various things and just moved away. I really didn't know what to say after that, so I changed the subject and started asking him more about himself and where he used to live. He wasn't very forthcoming. Eventually, our waiter turned up and started talking to us. To clarify for the next part, our waiter was a man of color and he had an unusual accent for our area. So my date stares blankly at him for a while and then turns to me and says, "You understand this guy?" I said that yes, I could understand him before telling him our orders. After he left, my lovely date continued to shock me. He said, "I wouldn't normally leave ordering to the lady, but that brown guy talked really weirdly and I didn't get it." Wow. Way to tell me you're racist and a sexist in one breath, dude. Again, I was speechless for a few moments before I got angry with him. I don't remember exactly what I said. It was something along the lines of, "Well, I'm not a lady, so I can order for myself just fine, thanks, and why make racial remarks?" Then he got annoyed with me and told me he wasn't being racist, he just wasn't quote-unquote used to the kind of person where he was from. I pointed out that he wouldn't have met me if he just stuck to people he was used to in his own country. He did calm down then and told me he wouldn't want that because he's glad he met me. Honestly, I found that a little weird given that I didn't see any way to say this date was going well and he didn't know me very well at all. But I decided since we had ordered, I should stay, get my meal, and try to redeem this evening before I leave and never see this man again. So I answered some of his questions about me, basic getting to know me and small talk stuff for the most part. Then started on about my previous date, if I was a virgin, whether I would be willing to wait until marriage, and then be submissive to my husband or not. It was at this point that I realized I was most likely on a date with a religious bigot, hence the misogyny, weird attitude to sexual stuff, and all of his other close-minded bullshit. So I settled for none of your business, now I need to leave. I checked the prices on the menu and left money for half of the food, plus tip, on the table, and I got up to leave. He said he didn't see why I was being unreasonable with him, as though this had been a normal date. But then he told me that I couldn't expect him to take my money because that was an insult to him. Fine, dude, you don't want to pay for a meal that's not getting eaten? You pay for it. I'm not that mad about spending my money that I'll stop you. So I took my money back and walked straight out. I just assumed that, yes, it was an awful evening, but I wouldn't have to see him again. I wasn't even back to my house when my brother started texting me, asking me where I was because my date called him in tears, saying I'd gone off for no reason and he didn't know where I was or what to do. Thankfully, my brother was pretty calm about it and assumed that I'd left for a reason. I explained everything to him and he was pretty surprised too. After that night, we both tried to cut contact. My brother stopped meeting up with the guy and we both blocked the Facebook account we had for him too. My brother also blocked his number because he would not stop texting him about me, alternating between being really worried about me to saying he hoped I dropped dead. Then he started making endless different accounts on social media to harass him. He told my brother he didn't know why we weren't talking to him. He posted a bunch of weird posts describing me in detail before going on to call me a lot of horrible names. We kept blocking them and moving on. Then the harassment got worse. He either found me and followed me at some point or got my address from a friend and turned up one day, standing around outside my house, asking to come in and speak to me. When I refused to let him in, he grabbed my arm to prevent me from going in either and started to tell me that he didn't want to let me go because I would never find a man who would love me like he did, and that if I walked away from him again, I would regret it one day when I was old and lonely. He went on like this for ages and ages while I tried to pull my arm away from him before I got fed up of this and yelled at him to get off me and leave me alone, then kicked him in the shin. He let go of my arm but cursed at me and said I was being ungrateful to him, but I took my opportunity to run inside and lock my door. He started banging on my door, then trying to push it inwards. I was getting both upset by this man and just super fed up by his presence in my life, so I grabbed my phone and called the police, telling them that someone was trying to get in my house. I was told someone would be with me soon, but 20 to 30 minutes later, there was no sign of them anywhere, and I was getting quite upset because this man was forcing my door, and I thought the lock was going to break soon, so I called my brother, who lives nearby, just because I knew he would come, even though I wasn't sure he would be much help. About 15 minutes later, my brother turns up, and after a brief conversation I didn't quite hear outside, the pressure was gone off the door. I waited a few minutes and texted my brother to see what was going on and if it would be okay to look outside now. He didn't reply, and the next thing I heard was the police turning up. I went out to see what was going on. Apparently, after my initial call, they had received another call from a neighbor saying there were two men fighting on my lawn. I guess this was my brother and the guy, since my brother looked out of breath and pretty shook up, and the guy wasn't around anymore. My brother explained to the police that he had tried to stop the man getting into my house and that the man had hit him. I told my side of the story, and some of my neighbors were asked what they had seen and were able to tell them about his attempts to get in. Plus, there were marks on the outer side of my door where he had tried repeatedly to get in. The police went to look for him, and a few weeks afterward, I was called and told they thought they'd found him. But when they wanted me to look at the suspected person, it wasn't the same man. I didn't hear anything else, and I don't know what happened to him. I didn't see him again, and so I'm probably safe after 15 years. Regardless, I don't ever want to see him again. Okay, so this is another reason why I'm happy that I never really dated around. I mean, some of it wasn't my choice, like nobody wanted to date me anyway, but for the part that was my choice, I'm glad I didn't, because first of all, it sounds really tiring, just generally speaking. Meeting people, asking questions, socializing, it sounds like a lot. But the other part was meeting someone crazy like this, and honestly, aside from the comments he made, I think the creepiest thing is the harassment. Like, as much as already his behavior at dinner, I think, is unsettling, the harassment is what scares me the most. Imagine paragraphs describing you as a person and then saying this person's shit or I want to kill them or whatever. Yeah, the making all these new accounts, just like the obsessiveness of it is what I find particularly creepy. Okay, so I don't have many friends because I choose not to. They get in the way of my choices and because I have trouble relating to people. But there are a few people I've kept around for various reasons, and this was one of them. He was someone I'd known for many years, our fathers knew each other, etc. Because of the fact that I don't like people very much, it's rare I stay in communication with them for longer than a year or two, but this guy was different. He was particularly quote-unquote loyal and never questioned my habits or behaviors. As a matter of fact, he'd encourage them, which I liked. I would go into detail about what they are, but this isn't about me. Let's say I'm a pretty morally questionable person. So I kept him around when I needed him. I noticed things were a little off about him, but who am I to judge, I'd say. First time something major stood out to me is when I found him in my parents' house, staying in one of the guest rooms when I'd never invited him. He had been there for days. My place was pretty big and my parents had been away. I rarely ventured outside of my section of the house. The only reason I find out is because the housekeeper asked me how long he'd be staying for and if they should clean his room. I didn't mind as I thought his parents had kicked him out or something and was just confused as to why he didn't ask. Another incident was when I'd be out with a girl, he'd call and call and call, and this happened on multiple occasions. When I'd answer, he'd just try and encourage a threesome or suggest we play that trick on her. You know, the one where she thinks you're sleeping with her only to do the old switcheroo, among other graphic things. When I'd say no, he'd seem to be okay. But then he'd send, like, gore and stuff to the girls days following. I had no problem with that, because it was their issue, and I assumed he was doing it for my amusement, because he knew that's the sort of thing I'd find funny. Other smaller things would be like doing everything the same as me. I'd crash my car, he'd crash his. I'd fly to Cancun for the weekend. Without telling him, he'd show up. I'd end up in a psych ward overnight. He'd straight up and try and end up there too. It got annoying more than creepy. So when I moved, I just ghosted him. I hadn't heard from him in months up until recently when I got a call from my mom saying that my friend had broken into their place and was staying in what used to be my room. My parents never being there never caught on, and he'd evade the help by hiding when they were there. The only reason they found out is because my dad checked the security cameras and he was roaming around the yard with a knife talking to my dogs, who knew him, hence why they didn't do anything. When they had him arrested, he just said he missed me and thought I was coming back soon, which I was for a bit, and he wanted to surprise me when I got back. This one really scared the shit out of me because, again, it's obsessive, and if it did actually happen, the fact of breaking and entering in the first place when he was staying in another room in the house, and in the second place when he was living in his friend's room without letting anyone know, that's just very strange. And also, I need to say, I started thinking about this post weirdly when the person said I'm a pretty morally questionable person. That already made me feel weird because I'm like, this person sounds very strange. Like, it's not a big deal to not have many friends. It's not a big deal to not like many people, because honestly, I can relate. But I think it's weird considering that the person posting was saying that they wouldn't care if he'd send gore to the girls and stuff. It's like, if you went out with a girl and some guy's randomly sending them gore, surely you'd kind of say something, but then again, they're morally questionable, so I'm just kind of wondering who this person posting really is, because they sound like they're kind of creepy as well. Anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons as always. I hope you didn't mind that I did something a little different. I know I make these videos every so often, but anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and let's get right into the fan art.